How did the UK's government cover up Rotherham grooming scandal so easily? Why didn't British Pakistanis, Raj, bear the brunt or fallout of that scandal? Yeah, so great question. Besides the little slur there, I'm kidding. Okay, but yeah, that's a really good question. And Shiv, you're totally right. Agreement and disagreement is healthy. Raj, basically, like, long story short, it was mostly because the government need to ensure that their votes are safe and they don't want to be seen isolating people. And the fear of literally being called Islamophobic and fascist, racist, neo-Nazi, all of that is just too big of a price to pay. For example, like I was saying, Jeremy Corbyn, his entire career has, taken a massive dive since he was labeled anti-Semitic. So you're right, like, even when some of the grooming gangs were busted in the UK, especially this Rotherham gang, all of those involved were actually Pakistani heritage Muslims. But the government was really clever, and they called it an Asian gang. And you apply the word Asia, it could literally now the implications are so far-reaching and so wide.
Well, in Australia,
I'm Asian, a Malaysian is Asian, an Indonesian is Asian, the Turkish could be Asian. You know what I mean? Like the boundaries are so wide now, so they didn't allow it to be tunnel vision and narrow into like British Pakistanis and smear that one community. So it was a deliberate move, and it was a deliberate measure to keep the term Muslim and even British Pakistani, like, as an ethnicity, out of it. So yeah, and also it's like actually based on trying to crack down on the far right as well. So, this is the conundrum that we're in. The woke left aren't willing to call out religion. They think it's the same as calling out somebody's cultural sensitivities and practices, like what Majid Nawaz would term as the bigotry of low expectations. And they don't want to make that stand and separate the bad ideas within Islam and ordinary Muslims, who they also could like assume these British Pakistanis fall under. So we're basically left in this vacuum, right, as a minority within a minority kind of thing, where we can't align with the far right that is actually racist, and we also can't stand with the left who won't acknowledge what we say. But on the back of this, when a lot of like reports came out saying, this is actually a phenomenon within the Muslim immigrant population and community, this is like mostly British Pakistani males of this age who engage in this, and we need to address it as a specific niche problem with this community. Again, because of all of the political backlash, all these reports came out as well where they're trying to highlight like white gangs, like completely ethnically Anglican gangs, because this is how they've turned it now. Like, they've turned it into Asian and Anglican and stuff. So they were trying to say that actually white people in England are also capable of committing the same levels of crimes, and they also groom people. Their methods might be slightly different. So there was a whole barrage of response to try and unvilify the British Pakistanis who were involved, if that makes sense. So there is a lot of like political nuance to it, and a lot of fear of like being labeled those things, and cancel culture, and like, what's it called, identity politics coming into play. So that's how they managed to get away from that. Actually, I honestly think they got off very lightly, and there should have been a little bit more kind of emphasis, because these are like actual, like, I'd call them hotspot zones in the UK where this happens. And yes, white men do engage in similar behavior. I definitely agree with that. But by and large, not to the extent that the British Pakistani men have been caught, like trying to groom people from the youngest ages, and the methods that they use. And then the fact that once they got caught, the imams in their local mosques actually had to give the Friday sermon where they talked about how no Muslim man should like be engaging in this grooming process. But the churches weren't doing that. The synagogues weren't doing that. The community centers weren't doing that. Only the imams felt it necessary to tell their people to stop trying to form these grooming gangs and carrying out these things. So that also speaks volumes. But yeah, there's a lot of political nuance to it. And sadly, the UK is just not able to, that's why I was saying earlier, it's not able to like separate Islamophobia from anti-Muslim bigotry to like actual cultural phenomenons. They've only just released that documentary recently about cousin marriages and saying, you know what, this is a massive problem, specifically within our Pakistani immigrant populations, more so than any others. But it takes that like acknowledgement to call out that community where that problem is far more prevalent. And that was long, but I hope that answered your question.
To help me produce more videos like these, support me on Patreon or PayPal.